Hey everyone, welcome back to CODwins, the people at Facepunch Studios who are basically responsible for the creation and development of Rust have been putting in quite an effort since its initial release back in 2013. And ever since, you would see tons of updates and improvements to the game that not only make the gaming experience way better for everyone, but they also end up making Rust a much bigger hit. Well, there's a lot more that's coming in the game, so let's get right into it. But before we begin, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon too so that you don't miss out on any of our upcoming videos. Alrighty now, let's begin. So, Rust got trains. Yes, people, let me get into this, but before that, let's see why this is so important. Now, any game without updates and improvements dies a steady death. Well, it may take some time for the games without updates to die, as they may have a large fan base that keeps it going, but nevertheless, they will eventually end up getting buried. There is barely any way one could save a game without effectively investing into the research and development side of the game, and I guess people at Facepunch Studios knew about this matter when they built up Rust. Obviously, this isn't just limited to Rust. You can see a ton of games always being upgraded on a frequent basis. Many games are not that frequent. For instance, the people at Rockstar Games take quite some time in order to upgrade Grand Theft Auto, but thankfully they do end up bringing in newer versions. What you might notice even about GTA is that as soon as some time passes with an upgrade or a new release, people start to get bored, which sounds troublesome. Coming back to Rust, since Rust is a multiplayer-only survival game, the features you get to see in it would remain pretty much similar throughout the journey of the game. For instance, you would see a combat aspect that involves competition no matter what changes the developers make. Unless they go for the paradigm shift in the game, it is very hard to change the basic core of it. But at the same time, if you wish to keep the game attractive and not let people lose interest, you need to bring in stuff that keeps them essentially engaged. The best way of doing so is by bringing in additional features to the existing version of the game, which over here, you might have guessed it, is the introduction of trains. This introduction basically happened in early March when Rust introduced one of their major updates. The new update basically had tons of features involved in it, but the most major and the most apparent one was trains. Now let's take a look at what this feature has to offer. The most common way to get to the underground train tunnels is by using the shaft, which actually takes quite some time to transport you from one place to another. Now, despite the loss of time, the entire process and the time it takes makes the gaming experience seem much more realistic and genuine, which honestly is one of the best things one could expect from Rust. The train tunnels that happen to be underground are normally not flooded by people, at least not yet, which happens to be a good enough reason to have a look around as soon as possible, because you never know when it starts getting crowded. Though this does not mean that you will not face any combat over there. You can obviously expect the same, if not a more tougher combat level in the underground tunnels. You can of course also drive your own train, which is awesome, if that is what it's called, and this happens to be a pretty surreal gaming experience if you ask me. But while you drive your train around, make sure you keep an eye for all other players out there who obviously would not see you in charge of the train. It would be better if you keep some backup with you. Rather, it might be extremely necessary if you don't have a good hold on this matter. The maps of the underground tunnels are also pretty sophisticated, which further makes the entire experience a pleasant one. Though since the tunnels are so well spread out and you have so many complications involved in it, it may take a decent amount of time for any player to get used to the train routes. And with that, since the game is essentially a multiplayer game, you can also use the underground tunnels to target your enemies and prey, and also move between your friends' bases. And since almost no one would be used to the concept of trains and underground by now, players checking the tunnels these days would be fairly easy to target, at least right now while the update is fresh. But do remember that the loot you find in the tunnels is not exceptional or expensive, so do not keep your hopes high when you go in there for some looting. Apart from that though, trains making their way into Rust is really cool and I am hyped for it. But with that guys, that does bring us to the end of the video. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't liked the video yet, it's never too late, so go give it a thumbs up. We'll see you soon in another video, but until then, take care and goodbye.